Good afternoon, this is Miss Young again here with another question on correcting pseudocode. So this time we are looking at paper 23 from June of 2024. This is question 4 on that paper. And it says here the pseudocode algorithms tend to allow data for up to 50 people to be entered and stored in a two-dimensional array. The data is their last name, first name, I'll just make this a little bit smaller, and the city in which they live, and it's for up to 50 people. And so we have 3 items with 50 people. Now, in my other videos, I talked about techniques such as matching pairs. For example, if we have an if, we should expect an end if. If we have a while, we should expect an end while, case, end case, etc. and so on. So we looked at matching pairs. We looked at patterns, so looking for repeating patterns. We then looked at something called variable mismatch. And then I said that there are a few specific cases, but apart from those, then we would be into what I call the logic errors. Well, this is one of those cases where the specifics come into play. So if we have a question where they've bothered to declare variables, then there is a good chance that we have a data type issue. And also the other thing to look out for is data or variable initialization issues. So let's start what we shall with the matching pairs, and we shall go through this methodically. So we have a for and we have a next, so that's good. We have a for and we have a next. And we have a case of, and we should be expecting a end case, but instead we've got an until. Now, of course, we have a mismatch, and we have to decide which is wrong. Is line 27 wrong or is line 12 wrong? Because there's clearly a mismatch here. Well, if this were a case, we would expect something with a colon and then some code and then something with a colon. And so this is clearly not a case statement. So the until is correct, and the mismatch is that this should be a repeat. So we can see that line 12 change case of to repeat. So do we have any other matching patterns? If, else if, end if. So that matching pattern. So we've dealt with, matching pairs. So then we want to look for patterns. So we have outputs, count 1. So input people count 1. Output, count 2. Output, count 3. And so this pattern here seems to match. We've got output, input, output, input, output, input. And we've also got 1, 2, and 3. So that looks at the face value to be okay. So we'll now look at variable mismatch. So we have people, count, response. We have an I and an I and a J and a J. And this is the correct way around because it's row, column. We've got count, we've got count, we've got count, we've got count, and that's where we're incrementing. We've got continue, and that's a Boolean. So that seems to be okay. So we don't seem to have any issues with variable mismatch. Well, that's not quite true, but I think we'll find that when we come to a different variable. Remember, there's an overlay, even fact, or even an overlap. We'll get there today. So let's look at data types. So we know the information we're inputting about people is the last name, first name, and city, which are string data. And we're looking at people, and this is correct. It's 1 to 50, 1 to 3. It says real. So we know there's an issue here because this should be string data. So we have an issue immediately on line 1, and we should change. What should we change? We should change real to string. I'm trying to write it here because I can't fit further down the page. I want to write the other errors on this side. And so we've looked at that. Count is an integer. Response, well, we're looking for a single character. That's okay. Continue is a boolean, and we're setting it to true and false. So we seem to be okay with data types here. Now we want to allow up to 50 people, and every time we go through here, we're taking this count value and incrementing it by 1. So if we're going to increment it by 1, we really ought to be starting at 0. So we can see that we have a data initialization error here. Count should be 0. So we have an issue on line 10, and we should change 100 to 0. So that deals with our data initialization, data type. We've dealt with variable mismatch and patterns. And so now we come down to logic errors, which again is the hardest one, but so far not too difficult following this pattern to get 3 out of 4 or 75%, which is a very easy A. And so let's look at the logic error. Well, where can we have logic errors? Well, there's no logic here or here. There is some logic here if the response is none. So that's a potential line. And then there is also a condition here, which is logic. Well, we want to know if the response is no, then we want to finish, and that sets continue to false, and it should stop. And that immediately, if we look at that and we say it out loud, we say, well, we don't want to stop until not counts, because count is an integer. So the logic error here also is a variable mismatch, because the Boolean value that we want to look at is continue. So if continue is false, not false will give me true, and it will drop out. So we know that the issue here is on line 27, and we need to change count to continue. Essentially, continue is what we call a flag. It's a Boolean variable that we use to flag whether in this case we should continue or not. And so in addition to the matching pairs, patterns, variable mismatch and logic errors, which are most times, if we have a declaration of variables, look at the data types. That's important if we see a declaration. And then we should also look at data initialization. And I said this in one of the other videos. For example, if we're looking at a min and a max algorithm, if the max is set to a very high number and the min is set to a very low number, then it's the wrong way around, because your maximum should be set to the lowest value and the min should be set to the highest value if we're setting them in that way. And so hopefully this is another question that will allow you to look and attack these in a methodical manner, and if you do that, they tend to jump out at you a little bit easier. And so that's the end of that one. I'm Miss Young, and hopefully I'll see you later.